Here again, and I thank the audience for being here, the audience with us in the room here, and the audience on Zoom. It's highly appreciated that you could join us. So the research I'm going to present today is kind of dear to my heart because this is a continuation of my PhD dissertation, like almost 20 years ago. But the problem seems to still be alive and keep on getting more interesting over the years. So essentially, this started even before my PhD, when I was doing an internship with a company in the northeast of the US, and they asked me to price some products for them. And I was trying to price some things, and I will tell you in a bit what are these things. I have a slide on that. And I was trying, I saw lots of price sensitivity. So when the price goes up, demand goes down. When the price goes down, demand goes up. But all the products, all the models in the literature, demand functions, so linear, additive, exponential, would not work. Nothing would work. So I went to my manager and I told him, what's happening here? Why is this not working? And he said, because this category is special, and there is substitution among products. So people switch from one product to the other. So essentially, what my conclusion was, I need a multi-product demand model that captures substitution among products. And that's what got me into the assortment dimension of this. And that what made me understand over the years that if you want to do good pricing, you also have to think about assortment, because what you offer, because of competition among products. So we're talking here about things like different, for example, colors, so the shirts with different colors, tops with different colors or different styles. If you're on a supermarket, for example, different coffee of different flavors or variants. So essentially there, demand is driven by what you have on the shelf and by the price of each individual item. So the assortment and the pricing decisions are practically inseparable. Unless for some reason the assortment is set by some higher power, then you can focus on the price only. So this is how I started working on the price and assortment. And then inventory came, because at that time I thought that, look, I mean, it doesn't make sense not to account for the lack of availability on the shelf of the products, where, I mean, I was in operation research. So I added the inventory aspect. And we looked at the inventory within the single period framework, the news vendor framework, which applies typically to fashion retailing. This has been the problem we've been beating to death for the last 20 years, and it's still interesting, basically, and challenging. And with time, I had other people working with me on this. Dr. Tarhini, he's here, he's my co-author on this. I had his name here. Sorry, Hussein. But he had many contributions over the year on this problem. And it's a very challenging problem where you have to do lots of heavy math and lots of computations. And I mean, I'm going to finish with this in maybe like 45 minutes. But our signature, I think, in this, unlike the rest of the literature, is that we develop pricing algorithms based on analytical models, based on mathematical results, not based on black boxes. So we don't do like these heavy machinery for, I don't know, like heavy gradient search and multivariable search, these things that take forever to converge. No, we try to analyze the problem mathematically, define structural properties of the objective function, and from those we come up with very easy solution algorithms that find the price and the assortment and the inventory within a couple of seconds. So that's kind of our, if you want the story in 2 minutes, this is the story. Okay. So anyways, today in my talk, I'll give some motivations, and then I will discuss 3 cases that worked on over the years. So I'm giving some old results at the beginning just for you to have the background. And this would make understanding the main contribution, which is on pricing and assortment for under the nested Logit demand, easier. So essentially, the demand model we're using is called Logit demand. And this is a very popular model for multi-product demand functions. It captures this issue of substitution among products in a very nice way. It's probably the most popular model for modeling multi-product price dependency. Okay. So we're going to focus on that, starting with the basic Logit, and then moving on to something called nested Logit, which can account for more variability among, or more heterogeneity among the products. And then we will give some ideas for the future. So some motivations here, basically. I mean, because I'm an engineer working in retailing, this is a kind of a disclaimer before I start talking about this. Why do I work on this? Because retail is part of services, and services are a big deal now. almost 80% of people, sorry, in developed countries, they work in services. So that's why, as an engineer, and even engineers in the US, this line shows engineering employment in the US, they're working in services. So that's why I have the right to work on this thing. All right, so I have this issue with the business school back home and with my dean. daily debate. So why do you do this? That's why I do this. Anyways, retailing has seen a big jump in this. So, I mean, you know, Wall Street, hiring physicists and rocket science to do price derivatives. In retailing, a similar thing is happening. Many of my friends now, including Hussein, who's with us on the line, and many others, they work for companies such as Target, Walmart, Amazon. People my age can find jobs thanks to this. So that's good. So this is what some people call rocket science retailing. You know. Okay, so more motivation. Essentially, I mean, everything now is customer centric, consumer centric. But this here is a bit old. This is like 10 years ago when a consulting company came up with this. And here they're describing a framework for demand modeling. Essentially, they're saying a good demand model should capture things like prices, supply chain, and many other things. So they're saying that a good demand model should basically take into account several factors. Here we have also things like basically they talk about space planning and merchandising. So for them, merchandising is like pricing and inventory. So they talk about shelf allocation. So essentially, this slide, which it talks about decision trees in the customer mind. And the way we transfer decision trees is through so-called consumer choice models, which are random utility models that describe how customers basically choose among products. So the mathematical translation of this is typically through random utility models, in a sense. Okay. And so this is what we've been trying to do also over. Now, more motivation is this, again, growing trend of AI and data science. Retailing has its share from it. So basically, and when Amazon bought what they call Whole Food, all the retailers panicked. And I think the first couple of weeks, Kroger was hit very badly when Amazon bought Whole Food because they dropped the prices, I know, in the US. And Kroger's bleeded big time because they were also relying on selling fresh food and these things. So these retailers, Kroger and others, Macy's and the like, when they saw Amazon moving to the brick and mortar, that motivated them to become more and more reliant or adopting of analytics and hiring more and more PhDs. So we owe to Amazon basically this kind of influx of retail analytics. Okay. So some numbers here. There's this company called CV Insight, which is a company that basically tracks startups in the US, growing companies. And here they're saying that the top 100 retail tech companies, basically an analytics company, they have a funding of $25 billion since 2017. And in the year 21 only, they collected $11 billion. So that's a huge amount. So when I saw these numbers, my objective in business changed. Before, my objective was to open a supermarket and make money from that. Now my objective is to have a retail startup and to sell it in a couple of years and retire. Because if you can get this much money, it's 100 companies only. You know? So yeah, and the companies, I mean, they have some names here. I mean, the names are not familiar to me even, but you can see what they work on. So they work on things like merchandising, planning, and inventory management. So today we are here mostly. I think they have store operation analytics, supply chain, and they have something about space planning. But anyway, so these 100 companies, they got lots of funding, and they're still private, so they can even grow more. So it's a big deal. This issue of retail analytics, it's a big deal, and this is an indicator of that. And these are some quotes from retailers. There's this website called Retail Information System. It's interesting. And another website called Business and Fashion. They have these case studies typically from retailers. These are some quotes from different, typically vice presidents, so executives from companies. And some of them emphasize what we're trying to do. So like this is JCPenney executive, he's saying assortment, allocation, markdown pricing are all linked together and optimized at the same time. So that's part of our objective, to do things at the same time. Basically here they're talking about assortment and inventory at the same time decisions. So these are codes from actual retailers. And this final code is from, I think this is from Saks, I believe. Oh, sorry, from Macy's. This one is from Macy's. And at Macy's now, they're hiring a team of PhD data scientists. Okay, so this is part of it, shows you how the field is. This is a very recent code, like last month, maybe, from Macy's. Now they have their own data science division and they're hiring lots of PhDs. Okay, so and now we go back to the my original motivation. So the problem was 6-ounce tuna, and I was trying to model the demand for this. And essentially, like I told you, no single product demand function works. So typically, you have DFP is GFP plus epsilon. DFP is GFP times epsilon. These are the multiplicative and the additive models. Exponential models, but as long as you are in the single product space, they do not work. And what's interesting at that time, the pricing division of the company, they were using something like this. So they were pricing based on a single product model, and the manager was very sharp, knew that that was not working, and he told me what's happened, but he didn't know what to do. Okay, so there's a real need to go from single product pricing to multiple products. So what was happening here is interesting, because tuna is a low cost, cheap item. And typically people on food stamp, they buy it in the US. And believe it or not, I was working in Maine, so a somewhat wealthy state, at least the people that are wealthy. But there's a high spike in demand at the beginning of the month because of food stamps. So that's something I noticed also. But it's not relevant here, but that's interesting. So for tuna, at the beginning of the month, let's say you have a spike in demand. And then what the retailer did, they kind of force the suppliers to adopt something called EDLP, everyday low price, which means one of these, let's say 6 guys here, they will take turn. One of them every 6 months, they will get the hit. They have to sell the product below the cost. This is the deal. You're going to stay with us. They were a big retailer. You have to sell your product below the cost. So these guys will be at, for example, $1.3. One of them will be at $1. Where the cost could have been $1.1. So what would happen in that case, 80% of the demand will go to the EDLP leader, or the guy getting the hit, and the rest of the demand will be split among the others. Okay, so it was a very nice case of demand substitution based on the pricing, and so what's happening here is something called cross price elasticity. Okay, so cross price elasticity means if you have competing product like these, when the price of this guy drops, you suffer. And when the price of this guy increases, you benefit. This is basically substitution or cannibalization of the demand based on the price. Basically.
I'm really surprised that retailers didn't know that.
At that time, this is 2002.
This is economics less than 1-for-1, to account for
Yeah.
all products in the category.
Yeah. It's I mean, if you look at the literature in operation research, even this is recent. This is I mean, back starting 2000, we started having these, more and more. Yes.
Here you mentioned that this logic capture models like logic capture, even the linear demand model would capture this, right?
To an extent, but the linear demand, you have these issues of limit. The price increases, it's linear, so linear could work over a small range, but logic could work better. Actually, it turned out the good model for this is something called exogenous demand model, not stochastic even. But this is not fashion. This is basically a supermarket item. Turns out that we can predict the demand in one of our papers a couple of years ago. We show that this can be modeled with a something called exogenous demand model. So a basic deterministic utility model, and we had a good prediction power because we were trying to publish in Omega at that time, and Omega see themselves as the best journal in the field. So they said you have to prove that your model works. So I pulled this data and it worked. Let's publish it. So with linear demand, I doubt, because you have these issues with the limits and being it might work, but I don't know. We tried this utility model. It works. I mean, what's happening recently, I talked to some people in Oracle retailing. They are doing more and more of these things. So they're using utility-based model, consumer choice models, and it's working for them. And they use things like least square fit to fit the demand. So it's not a big deal. It's not too sophisticated. But in economics, you're right. There's a long history of this. Also in civil engineering, in transportation science, they do these to model choice of the people between different transportation modes. But in operation management, this is what it seems. All right, so the literature, essentially, we're working on fashion goods here because we're assuming highly uncertain demand. You order for one period, demand is highly uncertain, so you have to sell after one period. So essentially, these are some background literature, some standard literatures now. Probably the most influential one among these is this paper in Management Science by Van Razen and Mahajan, where they looked at pricing, inventory and assortment for a news vendor. And they found that the assortment should be limited. And we'll talk more about this in a minute. So this is a good paper. And then we did some work. This is our work over the years. So basically, we do an average a paper every 7 years because it's a very complex mathematical problem. And we want to get analytical results. So we spend lots of effort to prove the theorems and it takes forever to prove. But we had 3 papers so far on this, and the 4th is in the cooking. So the literature is split between fashion goods and basically fast-moving consumer goods. So basically Macy's versus Carrefour or versus I don't know, Kroger. So if you are in a supermarket, demand is not uncertain. You know, the demand typically in a supermarket. I worked there for a while for fast-moving consumer goods. So, for example, coffee, sugar, even tuna. Demand can be assumed to be known with certainty somewhat. In fashion, no. Demand is typically believed to be uncertain. And this division of the models, I kind of verified it over the years by talking to many retailers I met at conferences and other people. This seems to make sense, the way to split things. So, and the particular work I'm going to present today, folks, on nested Logit, basically, which was published very recently. This is how it's positioned in the literature, essentially. So all these works in top journals, Operation Research, Management Science, by top names, as you can see here. Most of them are, if you can see, the approach is numerical, you know. So most of the approaches are numerical, based on our classification. Numerical means it's not the lemma theorem. They do more like numerical search techniques. We do theorem, lemma, the kind of what people call stylized, but really we apply it to more sophisticated models. So our contribution is that we address all 3 decisions on inventory, assortment, and pricing, and we are analytical. While the others, and there are only 2 papers that are analytical maybe here. The other analytical work, they typically pick one decision because things. So if you want, the idea is if you want to focus on more than one decision, life becomes very different. Okay, and you have to go the numerical route. What we've been trying to do is to consider all 3 decisions and stick to the analytical route, to trying to prove things with math. This is our challenge. That's why it takes a long time to produce a paper, basically. And you have the referees then and the associate editors giving you. I'll talk more about this in a minute, I think. Yeah. I'm going to go back to this slide. So a third kind of direction on recently we've been working on other people is retail space planning. So we were looking at pricing, variety, and inventory. A 4th dimension is retail space planning, which is where to place the products. This is one diversion I had recently, but I started thinking about space, and that we also had great success. We had an OR paper, and we had a recent book published on this. So that's nicer than this because it's not mathematically more as challenging as this one, and it's new. So the field is not as crowded as this for space planning. That's why we could roll easier there. But still, this is something I think which has lots of promise because now everybody wants to price correctly, and this offers a way for doing that. So again, what we're considering are fashion goods, so shirts, dresses, things like this. And the idea is the customers who are homogeneous to start with, they come to the store and they're faced with let's say shirts of different colors. They want to pick the right color for them. And the way they pick is based on what is offered and based on the valuation of these products. So typical economics, basically business. And the idea is essentially to determine the demand based on so-called purchase probabilities. So this Q1 of P is like the purchase probability, or in economics they call it market share of product 1 and so on. And we determine these based on something called the Logit or the M&L model, basically. And the idea of the M&L model or the Logit model is like this. The utility for product I is given by this. The first term here is the average valuation of the customer, because we have multiple customers that their valuation vary. So this is the average valuation across the customers. This is the retail price, which is the decision variable. And we have a random term. And the random term has a Gambel distribution. Now, why Gambel distribution? Because the Gambel distribution, also known as extreme value distribution, is the only distribution which is closed under maximization. The maximum of many Gambel random variables is also Gambel. That's why we choose this. So we also have a no purchase option. But anyway, to make a long story short, the probability of purchasing product I, given that we have an assortment S and prices P, is the probability of the utility being the maximum among other utilities, and it's given by this nice formula. Okay, so here we have the demand now, function of the assortment here, and the prices of each item in the assortment, the PIs. Okay, so this is the problem I did my PhD on like a long time ago now. And then, so the demand basically can be assumed to be normal, because typically you have Poisson arrivals, and that is this Poisson decomposition property. So demand is split among the different arrivals. So each demand is Poisson. You use the normal approximation to Poisson. You have a nice normal demand. So normal is nice, but what's not nice is that both the mean and the variance of the demand depend on the price and the assortment. And in the literature, like with additive or multiplicative models, typically either the mean of the demand or the variance depend on the price. To have both the mean and the variance of the demand, like this here, both of them depending on the price, is a nightmare. In the literature on the single product news vendor, there are only 1 or 2 papers that do this. So our challenge from the beginning has been to do this for multiple products. So this was our challenge. That's why it's a very hard problem to work on, you know. So this reference by Petruzzi and Dara, they talk a lot about this, and they argue that if you have this, then it's hell on earth basically, and may God help you. But we've been trying our best with it. Okay. So what we do is we find because we have normal demand, the optimal inventory level has this nice formula. So the mean demand plus some safety stock factor here, multiplied by the demand standard deviation. So one known result for the news vendor. What we do, which is different than the literature, we take this back and plug it into the news vendor expected profit. We have this. So this here is the expected profit at optimal inventory levels. So we assume we can optimize first over the inventories, and then we optimize over the assortment and the price. Okay.
What is the meaning of optimizing over the inventory?
You assume that S and P are given, and you find the optimal inventory levels of the products that make the profit the maximum. Okay. So that's what it is. And once you replace, you have this, and then here you have this thing here, this piece. This is the normal PDF and the inverse of the normal CDF. And we're trying to do analytical work, so that's I spent like almost a year in my PhD trying to figure out what to do with this. But anyway, our objective is to find the assortment and the price that maximizes the profit, of course. So this is a monopolistic setting for now. We want to find the assortment and the price that maximize the profit. And what we did actually, eventually I developed an approximation for this. But when I tried to publish my first paper on this, people did not like the approximation. So I was forced to get results with this annoying thing over here. Okay. So what we proved, and this is basically from a while back, we have 2 main results. One of them is about the assortment being a popular set. And this is the result of Verizon and Mahajan in 2000. But Verizon and Mahajan, they showed the result with pricing being exogenous. So the innovation for us, or the contribution, is that the prices are not endogenous. So they're not exogenous. They are the decision value. They are endogenous to the model. That's what complicated things. Okay, so we showed that when the unit costs are equal, which is a common case in the literature, including in Verizon and Mahajan, the optimal assortment is a popular set. Popular set means you pick the top products with the highest average margin, highest alpha, which is the mean reservation price, minus unit cost, which is, and that's interesting because we take into account alpha and C. So here you see the alphas are the customer valuation, the C's are the unit cost. So the optimal assortment is, for example, you sort these by increasing order of alpha minus C, basically of alphas here. And it could be, let's say, product 1, 1 and 2, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Okay, so this is what is called popular set. The insight behind this is interesting because this is probably the major operations management contribution to this problem, is that the assortment gets limited because of thinning up demand. Thinning up demand means that at some point, basically, the demand, which is split among the different products, becomes highly variable because both the mean and the variance depend on the price. So demand becomes highly variable. Its coefficient of variation becomes very high, and then because of high variability, underage and average costs become too high. It becomes not economical to carry the whole assortment. If you don't have an inventory aspect, then the optimal assortment is to carry everything. With the inventory consideration, because of thinning up demand, we are forced to limit the assortment size. Yes.
Here the popular set, when you think about the popular set, so there is no, does it take into account the fact that there is like substitution across products?
Yes.
Okay. So this K, like the criteria that you chose for selecting these K products takes into account the substitutability.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the idea. All right. So we have a result on pricing. Doesn't look very nice, the result on pricing. Because, but again, the idea is in the limit, if the mean demand is high, if you don't have too much thinning up demand. So if you're doing joint optimization, you have a good assortment. Demand is not too thin. The mean demand per product, which is the denominator here, is high. Then the profit margin, so P minus C, will be approximately equal across all the products. And this is not surprising because in the literature of marketing, they have this result always. For the larger demand, when you try to find the optimal prices turn out to have the same profit margin. Okay, so this is the insight here, and this is a common practice. People call this line pricing. So if you go to Macy's or to JCPenney, you see all the pants almost have the same price. All the shirts have the same price. This comes from here. From this result here. I don't know, maybe I don't know if the result came first or that came first, but line pricing is a standard thing where you have the same profit margin for all the products.
Line pricing here, you are meaning products that are substitutes?
Yes. So product are substitutes like different pants of different colors, for example, they all have the same profit margin. So if they have the same cost, they're not all having the same price. And I've seen it happening in many fashion retailers. They price all pants, for example, at $100. All shirts are $70.
For the same brand.
Yes. Or similar one. Okay. So they call this line pricing. Okay, and then 7 years later, when we did more work, and I could use my approximation finally, which is here. And here Hussein came to the picture. Dr. Tarhini could prove things I could not prove about the concavity of the objective function, but this approximation here made life easier, essentially. So this approximation, the profit function became nice and well behaved. And what we assumed here is that all the products have the same cost. And since at optimality, they would have the same profit margin, let's assume that they have the same price. So this becomes like a pricing problem. You set one price for all the products. And it becomes like it's still like a difficult problem, but still it's a single variable problem. So with this, we could show that the expected profit at optimal inventory levels is unimodal in the practice. It's not concave. It looks something like this. So it has a unique zero. And this is something people don't like, but this is because of the eccentricities of the normal demand. If the price is too high, the profit will become negative. But what we do is we avoid this area where demand is negative, because essentially we have a normal demand when the price becomes high, standard deviation becomes high, you can have negative values. So we avoid this by focusing on this region here. So our solution starts by finding this solution, this point here, so the first in the lemma. And then if we optimize here, we are guaranteed to find a unique solution. Okay. And this price will be the same for the entire assortment, basically. This was our result for the pricing and this framework of equal price. And then we showed the effect of the inventory on pricing. So essentially, what's new in our work is that we account for the inventory compared to the marketing literature. So we showed that because of inventory consideration, the price, so P0 is the riskless price, the price that they find in marketing and economics with no inventory consideration. So we found that the optimal price under inventory can go up or down from the risk plus price in a way that balances overage and underage cost.
Here, inventory is acting as a constant.
No, it's an additional cost. It's an additional cost term with change optimization from. So you have the gross profit if you want, and then you have minus the inventory cost. Once you add that, the optimal solution becomes P star.
But your inventory is infinite.
Not infinite. It's limited. It's Y star. It's given by the formula I showed you before.
Okay, but I mean, what would be the difference in having any cost in this case?
What do you
Why it's inventory cost that is mattering instead of saying that
because the only cost we have in this model, and on top of what they have in the, we have the variable cost and the inventory cost. With the variable cost only, so revenue minus cost of goods sold, we have the P0. We add the inventory cost, and then these things happen. Okay. And that well-known paper, Petruzzi and Maddah in 2000, they talk a lot about this. And what they found in most of the models in the literature, it's either this or this. And this only happens when you have this demand, which is so-called multiplicative additive. Both the demand mean and variance, they both depend on the price.
but we are talking here about the holding cost.
Not the holding cost, the so-called overage and underage cost. So if you you can have the holding cost embedded there. If you overstock, essentially you lose the C, the unit cost. If you understock, you lose the profit margin, P minus C. So this is called underage and overage cost. But you can add holding and penalty cost without loss of generality. Okay. So now this is the new stuff, which Hussein was kind enough to work on it also after he became a professor. That part he was a student for 10 years, and he became a professor with us. We were lucky to hire him. And then we took things one step further. Here we took things in 2 steps. I mean, it's a hard problem already, but we made it harder in 2 directions. On the supply side, we assume that we have different unit costs. Before the unit costs were the same, we assume we have different unit costs. On the demand side, we assume that the demand now is nested logic. Nested logic means the following. You go to the store, you want to buy a shirt or a top tank, for example. So first we choose the shirt or the top tank, and then you pick one shirt or one top tank. This is how it works. So you go here, you pick one nest, one shirt or top tank, let's say, or you could buy nothing. If all the nests you don't like, you buy nothing, and then you pick one product from the nest. Okay, this is like a 2-stage basically process. And the utility here is similar to before. The utility for product L in nest I is given by something like this. Similar to before, so reservation price minus retail price plus a random term. And this random term are also IIDs, so they are and from the Campbell distribution, but they have the same shape parameter, mu2. Okay. And the referees who refereed this gave us hell on why it's mu2 and not mu I. They said, no, mu2 makes life very easy. This mu I, it will be much harder. That's why we're working on mu I right now. But essentially, they made a big deal about mu2. Essentially, it's the same across all nests. Okay.
But I mean, is it a big assumption? Or?
No. So, because now we're doing it as mu I, and we have some good results. So, but their papers are in that table, operational research, science, lots of numerical work, and we're doing it in an easier way. So they wanted to defend their thinking. But anyway, I mean, good practice, good feedback they gave us. But they gave us 2-3 years of hell of things like this. Anyway, so moving on.
What would be the intuition of choosing the same derivatives?
Yes, the idea here is that there are 2 levels of heterogeneity of products. Okay. One between the products in a nest, and one among the nests themselves.
Okay.
And so we're assuming that in the same nest, the level of heterogeneity is the same across all the nests. That's the idea. So the way you choose between shirts is the same as the way you choose between top tanks, in a sense. So this is the idea. This is from probabilistic. But we're working on relaxing this, and we have some promising results. So we assume that based on our results from before, that the profit margins are equal. So now we have one new variable, which is the profit margin M. And we find the purchase probability now as a function of M and the assortment. So what's happening here, you need to decide what to offer in each nest, not one assortment. What shirts to offer, which top tanks to offer, which fans to offer, for example. So we found, and the way to find the purchase probability is in two steps. First, this is the probability of choosing product L, given that we have chosen nest I. It's given by the same utility maximizing thing, and it's interesting. This thing does not depend on the prices. Okay, so this is a simplification of the logic of the nested logic, and then so here's the other mu. So among the nests, we have a similar approach, but the Gambel have a shape factor mu1. So not mu2, no, it's mu1, and this mu1 captures the intra-nest kind of heterogeneity. And the attractiveness given by some people from economics, actually, trained, probably know this economists, McFadden. So these guys showed that the nest attractiveness is given by this, and this leads to this nice formula for the probability of basically choosing a nest. So you choose nest I with this probability. A bit complicated, but still somewhat close for. Okay. And then you put the two things together. So the probability of choosing product L in nest I is the probability of choosing nest I first times the probability of choosing product L in nest I. Okay. So it gets a bit more complicated, but we got lucky, and I guess we were very patient. Eventually, and we're very proud of this because we have a single line objective function for a very difficult problem. So, and this is Hussein's contribution mostly. Hussein was able to write the whole thing as, a very complicated objective as a one-line thing, a function of the assortment S and the profit margin. And of course, these things have expressions, we have them here, but this you can do in Excel, not too complicated. And then the challenge becomes how to basically optimize this. Is this quasi-concave in the profit margin M? How does the assortment look like? So our task was to analyze this, and we did that. And what we showed is that like before, we have an upper bound on the profit margin now, and the expected profit is unimodal in the common margin. So what we do first is you find the upper bound on the margin, then you find the optimal profit margin. Okay, so you're pricing a product line of multiple nests with one equation. And you're guaranteed, because of the unimodularity, you're guaranteed to have a nice solution. Okay. And we also analyze the effect of inventory on pricing. We find, like we found similar to before, that if some conditions hold, then the profit margin can be above or below that of the case which ignores inventory, basically. Okay. And we use this to sharpen the pricing algorithm further. So based on this, we could tell that, for example, the optimal profit margin can be in one of two ranges. So this M0 of S has a nice formula, by the way. I'll show it to you in a minute. So essentially, check a condition, and you have a very tight region on where the optimal profit margin is. So lines, yes.
What is this condition?
Honestly, it's just saying that the profit margin is high, something like that. So it's
Because all elements are positive, but you have this term that
yeah. So essentially, these can be negative, by the way, can be negative or positive. Yeah. So if this is high, if the unit cost is high compared to the profit margin, that means you have product with high margin, the fashion good with high profit margin. So if this happens, then we will be in this case, we'll be here in this. If this happens, we will be here. The price will go down because of the inventory. If we have cheaper products, and this is not hold, then the price will go down. That's the intuition kind of behind it. And the nice thing is that, and this is something we did, some other guys did, but we customized it for the nested logic. The riskless profit margin has a nice formula. And this formula is a function is based on a function called W function, Lambert W function, which is now being used in many fields in pricing and also in queuing theory now. They're using this function. So this is a nice formula for, and it allows you to do some nice analytical proofs easily, because now you have a closed form on this. So you find MS of 0 and the riskless profit margin, and then you can do optimization very easily. Okay, on the price. On the assortment, we have nested logic. It's not easy, but we showed that the expected profit is quasi-convex in alpha. That's typically the challenge. That filling up demand thing manifests itself mathematically in this quasi-convexity in alpha thing. But even with that, we could not do much analysis. So what we did is we had bounds, an upper bound and a lower bound on the profit. And these are tight bounds, okay? And with these bounds, we could show that the optimal assortment has a popular set structure. This is the make a long story short. So what we found here is that the optimal assortment has the best KI product in nest I. It's not popular set across all the product line. In each nest, you pick the best items. You pick the most popular products. And this is new. This is the new result, basically, that I think we were the first to show. And the nice thing, these bounds are not bad at all. Okay. So we tested the bounds numerically. This is if we change M, the profit margin, the bounds are not bad. We change other parameters. So the bounds don't make life, difficult at all. They don't ruin the solution, basically.
What are the citas?
The
Cita under bar and upper bar.
where? Here. These are basically some. We have this normal demand things. So essentially, these are bounds on those. Okay. So bounds to come.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So so we did good pricing, easy pricing solution, easy assortment solution. Then we put all of the things together and we did joint pricing, inventory, and assortment, which was the objective to start with from the beginning. And we could price, do the whole three things at the same time with high efficiency with this heuristic. And the idea is you assume equal profit margin, you assume a popular set structure, and then you optimize. Okay, it's like you add constraints. So you're adding constraints here. It makes life much easier. Essentially, the number of assortments you enumerate is not linear. It's not polynomial even, but it's not bad, not too bad. Okay, this is the order of it. It's kind of multiplicated, and you do line search. So you enumerate these many assortments, and you do a line search. So if you have, for example, two nests having cardinality of 3 and 4, you look at 12 assortments only, and you do on each of these 12 assortments a simple line search, which is guaranteed to converge. Okay, because we have this universality property. So, but this is a heuristic. We're not saying it's an exact solution, but we tested the heuristic. So, and the optimality gap, the maximum was 0.7%, was 0.7%, 0.73, and that the referees basically they pushed this off the cliff. The referee himself of the paper was looking for bad cases, and the best he could find is this. So this is basically stress testing. The worst thing that we got is 0.73%. And you can see it here. This is the optimality gap as we change different parameters. So the optimality gap, the difference between the optimal solution where we consider different prices, okay, and we look at all the sets, not just popular sets, we look at all the sets. So the exact solutions take hours to get. We had a very good undergraduate students actually helping us with this, and the guys spent many weeks to get the exact solutions. Okay, so our solution is obtained like within minutes. The optimal solution takes hours, if not days. And then we compare to those benchmark solutions that take forever to obtain, and we find optimality gaps, which are, I think, very promising. So this shows that we can solve hard problems easily. Okay, so this slide basically is our mission is accomplished in principle, and I think the editor of the journal, he liked the idea. We featured our article in something called IISE magazine. So we got some credit finally after the referees gave us that. But still, because of the referee's comment, we wanted to try to see this mu, what will it do, So if it's not mu2, it's mu I, what would happen? And it turned out that if you look at the riskless case, there's a nice result in the literature which puts everything as a function of one variable called rho. And this rho is like the profit from a riskless case, the case with no inventory when the market size is 1. So this is called the unit optimal profit margin, or something they call this. But anyway, long story short, what we're trying to do now, when Hussein has more time from his busy job at Target, and we have a student with us, I believe. There is George two are working with me on this. So one of my master students now is trying to work on this. So the new elements here are two actually. We have mu I that varies across the nest, and we added, to be in line with the literature, a coefficient for more complication in the price elasticity. So we added these two coefficients, and with that we have this result. But despite this, here we go again. We have now something very similar to before. So we have an objective function in one line, function of the assortment and this row business. So what we have to do now is to basically find some properties that this is unimodal in row, and we can try to analyze the optimal assortment. We did some numerical analysis of this, and it seems that popular sets, they continue to be fine. And if you, but here the margins are not equal anymore, but this row is equal. So kind of you have some perturbation by this VI parameter for the optimal margins. If you use this, it works fine. Okay, that's it. So I said, can I have one more minute? Okay, so one more minute. Essentially, again, going back to what I started with, what we're doing here is we want to solve assortment problems with simple tools based on in-depth analysis and structural properties, not based on black boxes and I don't know what. And basically, there are many high potential for this because the Logit is very popular. So the Logit.
Maybe I should cut it.
So the Logit. So the Logit has still receiving lots of attention in the literature. There are things like the mixed and the D-level Logit, which induce more heterogeneity in the customer themselves. So here we have assumed we have one customer segment. With the mixed Logit, we have multiple customer segments. And there's something called D-level Logit. So for example, you choose what to buy, a pant or a top, and then you choose a shirt or a tank top, and then you choose one. So this is called a D-level Logit. And we believe that the same machinery we applied for the nested Logit can be applied for these demand functions. More interestingly, and this is something I verified last night, there are some results in the literature that say that any random utility model can be approximated by a mixture of logics. So if we can solve the Logit problem in this general sense at this level, we might find a solution for any pricing problem with a random utility function, as an approximation at least.
Random utility function, assuming that you have one deterministic part that is linear and
no, it goes beyond that actually. I was looking at those papers yesterday. No, they can be non-linear, but you approximate them with linear.
So you can start from anything you want, but at the end of the day, the deterministic part is linear.
Yes.
Last thing.
Yeah. That's it. Thank you for listening. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties.